Blue Jays fans, and welcome to another lovely episode of Jaybird Watching. Fellas, we got a heck of an ensemble here tonight. We are literally all the old Jays Journal guys all in one place again, as we have Ari Shapiro joining Brendan Panikar, Adam Corsair, and myself, Craig Borden. Gentlemen, how are we doing this evening, other than terribleness that's going on?
I'm good, man.
Yeah, not too bad. Not sure how to feel, really.
Feeling proud and Canadian right now, man. Proud and Canadian. That's all.
With you right there, Ari.
Here in the States, exact opposite right now, and kind of angry. Not gonna lie. So, anyways, but we're gonna talk baseball on this show. We're not gonna get too political, other than jokes aside. So, fellas, let's dive right into all the fun here, because there is some things that we would like to talk about. And in Blue Jays land, things are looking up, but hence the name of tonight's episode, we're in the quote-unquote hurry up and wait stage, because just nothing seems to be happening, and this is all off season in general, baseball across the board. COVID be damned, whatever it might be. There has not been any big moving pieces other than the quote-unquote redo for the whole San Diego Padres roster over the past week. But let's start off with our guest here, Ari Shapiro. George Springer has quote-unquote been offered a aggressive package from the Blue Jays. He was looking for $30 million a year, and was hoping for at least $150 over 5 years, I believe was the ticket. So the quote unquote offer is aggressive, but not that. What do you think we are shooting at here?
It's not. Not that any of us should really be surprised, right? I mean, after the season ended the way it did, even though it was nice to taste the playoffs, and I say that very, very delicately, because the truth is we all know that the team under regular normal format would not have made the playoffs. This was a rare opportunity to maybe see what this young core can do. And even though it was a disappointing outcome, you learn from every disappointment. You hope that every team that you assemble with the roster can take something from any stretch of mediocrity or failure. And when you're talking about George Springer, of course, you're talking about a player that will instantly give you the kind of credibility you need. And of course, if you're not going to give him a serious offer, then you're just going to be blowing in the wind and doing this thing that the Blue Jays are doing, where Ross Atkins likes to say we're going to make a concerted effort. We're going to be serious this offseason. We want to be taken seriously. You want to be taken seriously, make a serious offer, especially for the kind of player that has the on-base percentage, the bat control. I mean, he does strike out, but we all know he's an absolute baller with his use of the bat and power, and the fact that he's got great instincts. And honestly, I don't know about you guys, but the only thing that makes me cringe about him is his association with the Houston Astros, because my personal feelings with him are that, if you're going to go after a player, look at the environment he played in. And yeah, he's a World Series champion winner, but with the good old-fashioned asterisk of cheating in my books. So, you know what? I like that they're tossing out the propaganda and saying that they're actually trying to get him. But the truth is, when you consider what the stock is for a player of his caliber, and the fact that there was talk that they were in on DJ LeMahieu, which we know is just, fable land, fairy tales. But still, if this team really wanted to show fans that they were serious to compete in this upcoming second wave post-pandemic incarnation, I don't even know what to call it anymore. You want to compete in 2021, go out and get players that'll make you a better team today, rather than having to sell a bill of rights for the future. Bill of goods, sorry. I said bill of rights because of the subconscious.
Where's your head at, man? Come on, we're talking baseball.
Yeah, where is my head at today?
Brendan, you want to pick the ball up there and run with it?
Yeah, sure. It's tough to know with this front office what a competitive offer is, right? Because there was the whole rumor that they gave a competitive offer to Kim, which we dissected last week. To me, a competitive offer for Springer, just a player of his caliber, who's a really good player, who's also 31 and plays in the outfield. So he's on the wrong side of 30, would be $25 million per year. So if they went out and gave him an offer of $125 over 5, I think that's pretty damn good. And if I were Springer, I'd be like, well, if nobody comes and beats that offer in the next few weeks, I kind of want to know where I'm going to be playing this year. So I might take that offer. I think personally, guys, the max I would go for Springer is probably 130 over 5, and that's $26 million per year on average. I think anything higher than that is a considerable overpay. But at the same time, that might be what they have to do to secure George Springer. Because look, I think as soon as he's close to a decision, whether it's him going back to the Blue Jays and saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to take your offer, which also means like in the real estate world, I'm going to go call up other agents and try to drum up another offer that's better than that. I'm sure the Mets will swoop in if the Blue Jays offer is at 130 over 5 and be like, we'll give you 150 over 6 or 150 over 7. Would you take that if we give you your dollar amount just spaced over a longer period of time? So yeah, I think the offer was probably around there. I would have a hard time believing that a competitive offer is 110 over 5. I think that's a little low for a player of Springer's caliber, especially when you consider Ryu got 20 per year. And I know he's had an injury history and is a pitcher, and he's a little bit older. But still, I think 25 mil for Springer, where there's a clear need for him in the outfield. I'd pay that. I'd go a little bit higher if that's what it would take. But I'm not sure how much higher I'd go.
Adam?
Yeah, I think the offer was probably around 125 over 5. To me, that has Blue Jays written all over it. It's a bit conservative, but at the same time, that's aggressive in relative to the Blue Jays, right? I do think, though, we've touched on this before. I do think, though, there's an element that maybe his representation is using the Blue Jays as leverage in order to put the Mets in a precarious situation where they have to pay a little bit more. And I think the new ownership there is eager to do it. So the chances of him landing on the Jays, I think, are diminishing daily. And I don't think that 125 over 5 isn't something that New York can't match. And in fact, I think they'd be eager to. I think it's going to take a $150 million contract in order for him to play in Toronto.
Yeah.
And if Toronto wants to pay that, it's not my money. I mean, I don't care. You can pay, and for me, it's not like you won't get production out of that, at least in the beginning half, right? If come year 4, year 5, he's sort of washed, it's the price you pay. I mean, that's just the way baseball has been going when signing free agents. You regret it towards the end, not in the beginning, hopefully. So for me, it's if we're gonna pay him 150 over, fine, fuck it. Let's just go for it. I don't care if he settles for 140 over 5 or 140 over 6. Fuck it. I don't care. That's fine with me. It just, at the end of the day, it's just money for me. I think this team needs to sort of put up at this point. We've said it in text messages. They need to be aggressive, right? And I think they're well aware of the fact of their limitations, being a team that has difficulty signing free agents, and so they're going to have to pay up. That's just the name of the game. And if they want to field a competitive ball club right now, especially given the fact that the Red Sox are sort of on the outs, the Orioles are a team that, otherwise me mentioning them isn't a thought. The Yankees could have their team in disarray, and the Rays, although we still find them low key scary, they have had some subtractions from their team that we might be able to capitalize on. So right now is the time to do it. And if it's 150 over 5, fine, sign me up. I don't care. It's just money.
So I'm going to give a shout out to Bernie Time on our YouTube channel that's actually listening live.
Nice.
He is in total agreement with you, Adam, that the Blue Jays are one way or the other having to overpay to bring George Springer in on this whole Blue Jays thing. And right now, I'm kind of wondering if the Blue Jays actually gave, now that I finally have somebody here I can have an agreeing conversation with this cheating thing on with Ari. Maybe it's the cheating penalty. Sorry, you fuck your extra $5 million. You can deal with it.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. Like, I think it's kind of sad too that we're all aware that George Springer is. I think you mentioned it, Brendan. He's 31 years old. There's nothing quite like talking about a free agent pickup with a player who's past his prime. Which is not to say he can't have great years, but as a defender, he's lost a step. He's I think just maybe slightly above average. He's in that kind of danger zone where a couple more years and he'll go from being regarded as a guy you might want to put to the right or left if need be, or DH. Talented guy, but again, it's like you said, Adam, you got to pony up the money. And at this stage in the game, you can't use the excuse that you're the only Canadian team or you've got limitations. For God's sake, when you've got ownership talking about demolishing the arena and developing real estate, talking about changing the way it's played here, the least you can do, and like you said, Craig, it's only money, is spend a little bit to get the key players you need. And this team could really benefit instantly with a George Springer in the lineup. So if it's going to be about $5 million or $10 million per year, you got to ask yourself what's the priority? Like, what are you trying to do? Do you want to build a real contender, or you just want to get some headlines?
Yeah, and it could potentially be exactly that. Ari, it is the biggest free agent on the market right now. That is the perfect name to put up on the marquee with Vlad, Bo, and Biggio right there.
Yeah.
And then obviously along with the rest of the company with Ryu and everybody.
Absolutely,
But,
teach the nucleus how to win. Just don't mention how you did it a couple of years ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just
Remember
saying.
that time we just threw a brick of money at.
Yeah, exactly. Well, think about it, right? You're going after a guy that you're saying is a champion, yet you know that he was part of that noxious culture. And don't get me wrong, I'd like to think that Springer, he's a very correct me if I'm wrong. He's partially from Puerto Rico or Panama. I think he's got an interesting kind of exotic lineage that goes with it. And so it's great because he's representing multiple cultures, but unfortunately he represented the worst culture of all, which is the cheater.
Yeah.
And I feel very strongly about it simply because it was a kick in the teeth earlier in the year when, the culprits associated with it are now employed again, being AJ Hinch and Cora. So Springer probably really distanced himself from that, is telling his agent, let them know how great I am and I won honestly and look at my numbers. And his numbers don't lie. He's been very consistent. There's something that really flies out at me other than the fact that I still can't believe that there's such a difference between his, strikeout and walks. He's becoming more and more of an all or nothing kind of player at the plate, but then he'd fit in nicely here with this Blue Jays team.
So he's Kobe Rasmus when it comes to walks for strikeouts.
Oh, why you gotta do that? I thought we were gonna have a lovely chat tonight. We got to bring Kobe Rasmus. You know the great thing about Kobe Rasmus? Isn't it awesome how clueless he seemed during every day he was in a Blue Jays uniform? Like, we talked about him more. We analyzed him more to death. And you think about him. But in the end, he'd get interviewed and he'd be like chewing bubblegum and going, I just want to play baseball. You gotta admire that ignorance is bliss. So.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, everybody else on this show that's growing beards, I probably only got the neck beard thing going on right now, and is in the where are they now category. So I guess it is what it is.
Exactly. Well, I don't know if it means that men with beards are doomed to mediocrity per se, because he was a stone cold mediocre player. But what hurt about him is, remember, he had those couple of weeks where every so often he'd show up and just start slugging, and you'd be like, oh my God, look at that natural God-given talent. Why can't you be the natural? Why can't you be Robert Redford? And instead he was like, Babe Ruth if he'd lived to like 84, which is like barely able to hold his bat at the plate. Strikeout. Remember his strikeouts, guys? His strikeouts were legendary because he had no idea.
As I steer Ari off onto the Colby Rasmus train already this morning.
Quickly get us off it, yeah.
So, does anybody want to wrap anything up on this whole George Springer thing? And I know we've talked about it extensively on this show on how this is a perfect money fix for the Blue Jays and whatnot. But obviously, I don't know how much this is a failure on the Blue Jays to not throw him the exact offer, or if this is actually how the Major League Baseball free agency market is actually shaping up. Because in all reality, we haven't heard that the Mets are all of a sudden going, oh yeah, by the way, here's $40 million a year. Just hurry up and pack your bags. I doubt anybody's really. I was actually surprised when I heard that 5 for $150 million initially. I don't know if he's really worth it. And there's a lot of these things that the collective gang here has been talking about. Adam, do you see? I think the Blue Jays would have to give him that deal to finally ensure that he puts on the new powder blues. But are you there that you have to do this, or you think the Blue Jays probably in that like 125, 120 ballpark is more safe? I'll let you kick this one out.
Oh, it's safer, but you have to do it. Look, when it's no secret, like I've already said, it's difficult for free agents to come to Toronto, whether it's for the Blue Jays, whether it's for the Raptors, and I don't really know about hockey, so whatever. But when it comes to, crossing the border, it's difficult. And that's not an insult to Toronto. It's just the name of the game. And if you want to field a competitive team without sacrificing some of the minor league talent that you have via trade, or some of the major league talent that you have, i.e. Lourdes Gurriel, you have to pony up. And we've talked about this ad nauseum. the team is in a great position when it comes to financials. They're one of the only teams in baseball that didn't lose revenue because of the ratings from Rogers went sky high during the season, right? So they gained money, and they had a cushion there to be able to allocate those funds however they please, right? And so if you have the money to do it, and you're already the richest team in baseball, even before the pandemic, you're the richest ownership in baseball, you have no excuse. Right, you absolutely have zero excuse not to do this. So if it's 150 over 5, people are going to call it an overpay. It will happen. Analysts are going to say this is bad for the Blue Jays, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Want to know what's great for the Blue Jays? Fan appreciation. Want to know what's great for the Blue Jays? Revenue. Want to know what's great for the Blue Jays? People buying jerseys. And I understand you have people right now that are so excited with the youth movement, Bo Bichette, Vlad. I get it. I'm there. Kevin Biggio, he's my guy. Everybody knows it. But the thing is that if you sign a George Springer, jersey sales are going to go off right then and there.
I'd be buying
Brendan, yes.
I was going to buy one, Brendan, for Christmas, but I'm broke because we don't have nice sponsors anymore.
Brendan's going to hit up Fanatics, right? And he's going to make a custom jersey. The number's going to be wrong. And when they release the real jersey, he's going to buy that one on top of it.
Right? Oh, that's what the duct tape's for, guy.
That's what I'm saying. So at the end of the day, this is a smart business move for the Blue Jays. And they're going to make that money back. It's whatever at that point. They're going to make that money back tenfold when it comes to revenue from jersey sales, when it comes to revenue from ballparks when they open. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. So I'm not worried about the money. I don't care. 150 over 5. That's 2021 baseball. Where are we at? This is somehow an overpay? No, not at all. I don't care. Just give me something to be excited about, because we know this team has potential, but this team isn't World Series capable right now. You put a George Springer on the team, maybe that alone doesn't make them World Series capable, but God damn it, they're playoff capable. And if they're playoff capable, that makes me excited. I'm going to watch, even if they get bounced out the first round. I don't care. I'm going to watch. It's going to be great. All I want is playoff baseball. Put George Springer on the team, make it happen. 150 over 5. I don't care.
My only fear, guys, is that 150 over 5 still doesn't get it done for him to come to Toronto. I feel that's a price. I feel that's a price that he set for the Mets or the Red Sox or whoever to go to him and be like, I will sign the dotted line right now, 150 over 5 if the New York Mets offer me. Whereas if the Blue Jays came to me, I feel it's like, what's that little bit more? I got to come to Canada, or I don't know where I'm going to be playing in 2021. So I don't know where
Buffalo's
I got to find
wonderful, and we're going to win a Super Bowl. Come on, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, you want to hit bombs? You want to hit legit bombs? Play in Buffalo in a minor league park. Hit bombs.
Sign a 1-year deal. Play with us in Buffalo, and then you can get any contract you can ask for.
Because, look, if what we're saying is all just money, I believe the Blue Jays feel that way too. Like, surely, if Springer came to the Blue Jays like a week or two from now after not getting much action, and be like, guys, if you came to us and meet us, we will sign the dotted line right now. We will not go around to other teams. You got to feel that they would do that just to get him in the building. I'm just not so confident that 150 over 5 is what it will take for the Toronto Blue Jays to sign him, because of the Canada factor, because of the fact they don't know where they're playing, because of the fact so many other reasons that people just are scared of playing in Toronto, even though everybody ends up loving it after they played here for even 2 months. 2 months of David Price. And if Anthopoulos had stayed, I think Price would have resigned. So people have nothing but good things to say about it. So take a risk and come. But yeah, I'm scared that 150 over 5 doesn't get it done for the Blue Jays, where it does for the Mets, for the Red Sox, for others.
I got to disagree. I think that it's the 120, the rumored 120 over 5 is for other teams. I think 150 over 5 is the rumored price for the Blue Jays.
That's possible.
I think it's going to take an extra 20.
Could be right with that.
And you and Ari, you and Brendan would know the tax, equivalent here. And I don't really know much about it, but maybe 150 over 5 and CAD is equivalent to 125 over 5 in USD. I don't know. Or maybe it's close to it. I don't know. But at the same, I think it's going to cost that extra $25 million in contract revenue for him to come. And if that means 150 over 5, I mean, I'm cool with it.
This is the contract, right? This is the contract for his career at this point. He's never going to make as much money potentially as he can over the next 4 or 5 years as a result. So You've got to figure that he's going to go, like, as you mentioned earlier, Adam and Brendan elaborated on the fact that he's going to be looking for a true home run of an offer that he can say, I didn't just do it for the money, but I did it because I went to a place where I really want to play. Is that Toronto? I don't know. Not if he's being pursued by some of these higher tier elite teams. And I'm sure they're presenting it as like, look at our nucleus. Look who you're going to be playing with. You know, we have a potential home run champion next to you in the outfield, and we have this great nucleus of Bichette and Guerrero Jr. and Biggio and whatnot. And I'm sure that'll impress him. But don't forget, he's seen that before, and he's already won a World Series. Maybe he's going to do it just for the money. You know, if I were a player who's already got the World Series in my pocket, then I want to go to an organization where I can be very, very comfortable. And I don't know if, you know, the Toronto option is very attractive. Hasn't been, and is the reason why we've lost out on a lot of free agents in many years before.
Yeah.
Except for that weird Ricciardi stretch where we just picked up guys left, right, and center. And at one point we had like BJ Ryan and Scott Rowland. Like, what the hell was going on? But those are far between.
The other day too.
That's right. But Ricciardi was desperate because he needed to win, and he wasn't winning. Whereas now the Blue Jays, where's the desperation? Like, honestly, where's the desperation? Ross Atkins seems like he's going to be general manager for the next 45 years. I don't sense like his job is on the line. And until I feel that, I don't think he's going to go and make big deals.
On that note, too, Ari, the Ricciardi era was known notoriously for being pretty much the worst drafting baseball team in all of baseball for the better part of 8 years. That's right. You're talking about our top prospect for at least 3 of those years was the lunchbox hero. We all loved Travis Snyder, but Travis Snyder wasn't the next best gift of Blue Jays baseball.
No, but in typical Toronto fashion, he got absolutely rammed down our throats. And I hated the fact that if you're a professional athlete and you're a young player and you want to prove yourself to the fans, you don't need the media setting that standard, because you most of the time you won't reach it. I mean, how many phenoms just show up and get it done? Look at Vladdy as an example. Guerrero Jr. shows up first day in camp. Everyone's like, look at that fatty. You know, like, I hate to be so indelicate, but that's literally what was happening. Everybody was using like different hyperbole and adjectives to describe the fact that the kid was out of shape. And all you had to do was look with your ochis, as they say in some languages, you know, with your eyes. And if you're wearing glasses like you are, Craig, you can see very clearly what you've got. And the media did him a huge disservice, because if you look at his time, his major league service, he's actually doing. If you didn't have those expectations, you'd say this is a promising player. But now we're all like, oh, man, he better prove himself or it's a waste of our time. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not costing you what it should. You invested in him. You've got him until he's, 24, 25 years old. So why not surround him with players that'll protect him in the lineup? Yeah. Because pitchers have figured him out. So give him some protection. That's what Springer can be. Springer can be ridiculous protection to make sure that Vlad gets quality ABs. I don't know what you guys, but that's what I would get him for. Chaperone him to spend time with him, teaching him the way to play good, honest baseball.
He had to be that guy and pour salt right on it.
I will. I can't resist. I'll keep throwing it in from time to time.
There it is. As Ari's throwing slight grenades at everybody. Don't worry about it. So, but gentlemen, I'm going to move on because it sounds like we're all in agreement about the whole George Springer thing, that it's going to take a little bit extra for the Blue Jays finally to put the nail on that and pin that up in their roster. But moving along to somebody apparently we have made a really good offer to, and apparently, according to what Brendan Panikar told us right before we went on the air this evening, it's Toronto or back to Japan for Tomoyuki Sugano. I don't know what the contract suggests, guys, but if they made an offer, this is a guy that more or less is Masahiro Tanaka. Are we getting him cheaper than Masahiro Tanaka would be? I guess the only question. Who would like to take the lead on this whole idea? What do you think it takes to get this done if we did get him out of those posting fees?
Well, all I'll say is that the article that, and I'll give him a shout out, what's his handle? @_Clint_B_. I'm sure you guys have seen him on your feeds before. But he said that the Jays offer isn't where he would like, which is why it's between going to Toronto or going back to Japan. But it's the best that there is, according to this article, which is a Japanese outlet that's reporting it. It's called The Page. So he's just expanding on that article on Rosenthal's report. So the whole thing that we've seen with Sugano is that he hasn't gotten the interest or the love that he thought he was going to get when he came over here. It got posted by the Giants over in Japan. So that's why he's leading towards going back and maybe trying again next year or 2 years from now to come back to the major leagues. So I don't know. I don't know what he was expecting to get. I don't know. I haven't seen any sort of rumors or dollar figures tossed around with Sugano. So like my guess, like obviously, I think he's more highly touted and better regarded than Yamaguchi was. But like, I can't imagine it being the Blue Jays offer that much better than Yamaguchi's, like kind of similar-ish. But I have no idea. I can't speak too knowledgeably to it. There hasn't been too much reported on dollar figures or amounts, but it does seem like it's Blue Jays or nothing at this point, which I guess is encouraging. But it's at the same time, it also seems like it's the Blue Jays by default because nobody else is ponying up.
If nobody else is there to run against you, you win by default.
You're still at
Kind
first.
of like I was playing billiards. I was playing 8-ball by myself, and guess what? I won. So just saying. But I'm in agreement with you, Brendan, that it's probably in that same mold. That it's got to be a Yamaguchi type contract. And per our conversation last week with Kim and the Blue Jays not giving the guaranteed major league thing, I don't think that this is going to be one way or the other. It's a minor league deal. I think very similar to what I was surprised that they even brought Yamaguchi up with the team this year. And I think in a non-COVID world, he probably was playing in Buffalo, just like a lot of the young players that we have. But the other catch on this whole thing with Sugano is he's 32 years old. Is somebody really willing to throw high-end money on somebody that's never pitched a game in Major League Baseball when there is the quote-unquote gentleman that they're comparing him to actually on this free agent market in Masahiro Tanaka? At least you know what you're going to get from Tanaka. Yes, there's going to be some injuries, but when he's out there, he's going to pitch great baseball. Anybody?
Yeah. In fairness, you brought up a good point about Kim. In fairness, we sort of have to walk that back because I think Jason Lee posted this, but it has been reported that they walked back the notion that it was a minor league. They refused to give him the minor league exemption. Apparently they were willing to do it. And if that's the case, then it was just a preference thing, right? Or maybe they weren't promising every day playing time, like being the starting, I don't know, second baseman. But they were willing to give him the clause in the contract saying you don't have to go to the minors. But that's just a side note. That being said,
regardless on that.
Yeah. I think that you might have a point when it comes to the minor league deal for this contract, or maybe he's just, again, not interested in playing in Toronto, and this is maybe used as leverage for him to sign somewhere else. Or maybe it's used as leverage to the Blue Jays to say, look, if you don't up your offer, I'm going back to Japan. Yeah. Maybe they're trying to put him in a state of panic. Either way, I think in this particular situation, there's a decent amount of unknown, and there's a decent amount of risk that you're putting in, unlike George Springer, because you know the product that you're getting, or you think you do. When it comes to pitchers translating from Japan over to the MLB, it's really hit or miss. More often than not, it's successful, but it depends on the price point that you're willing to pay. And again, before, when it came to Springer, I said it's just money, but again, you sort of have a good idea as to what you're getting. Right. So when it comes to this contract, I would say the Blue Jays, stick to your guns, man. Don't overpay. Stick to your guns, because it seems like you're in the driver's seat on this. It seems that way. Unless the Rangers want to sign him, and they're pretty good at signing international Japanese free agent pitchers. So if they are able to do it, then cool. But if the Blue Jays are the best offer on the table when he goes back to Japan, at least you can say, hey, we were the best offer. It's nothing we did wrong. He just doesn't want to play here. At which point I give them a pass. It's fine. Yeah.
Good deal. Ari, you want to wrap anything on that, or are you good?
Well, I find it ironic that, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we have some excitement around these parts when the sweepstakes for his services became available? Wasn't there this kind of perception that maybe the Blue Jays might pull a rabbit out of their hats?
Yeah.
If this time around,
Darvish too.
Especially Darvish even more so. But I remember there was a profound sense that they were legit in their interest and came close on both occasions in terms of getting their attention. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a Japanese phenom that has stood the test of time. I mean, we're talking about a big boy. He's like 6'1", 6'2". He's over 200 pounds. He's got to kind of work to his regimen, and clearly he has overcome a serious injury and become better for it. Pitched a no-hitter, I think, in 2018. We're talking about a guy who's got a forkball and 2 different fastballs. And that's fascinating to me, because he's the kind of pitcher, after what Ryu did and showing that an international player can step in and captivate an audience. Why not take a risk on this pitcher? Why not plug him in and see what he could do, knowing full well that at worst you've got a hell of a PR story that you can capitalize on in talking about the multicultural nature of this Blue Jays team. And then there's also the fact that you can make up for the lost opportunities of going after internationally available players. I have no problem with 31, 32-year-old pitchers. I have more of a problem with a 31-year-old center fielder being locked in for 5 years than whatever couple of years the Blue Jays might throw at Sagano. So I wouldn't mind Sagano being mentioned in the mix, because I think that it's on the pitching front that the Blue Jays could really surprise people next year. And the more the merrier in that regard. Why not take the risk? Maybe if you're going to miss out on Springer, spend the money on some of these other interesting free agents and give your team a chance to come in with a different flavor. I love Japanese pitchers for some reason. They just strike me as being very fastidious and very focused. And by all accounts, if you look at Sagano's resume, I mean, like 1.8 career walks per 9 innings? Bring it on. That's my kind of pitcher.
That's right.
Not to mention, it sounds like from everything I've been hearing, especially on the Talking Baseball podcast the other day, they were talking about Sugano extensively and his work ethic. This is the equivalent of a Roy Halladay-like work ethic in the locker room. And I don't care who it is at that point. If you're bringing somebody in like that, it just makes everybody want to outdo each other, I think, a little bit in the locker room. If he's working that hard, how can I get on that level and bring the team up collectively? Those are the kind of guys you want to bring into your dugout and build that work ethic, which I think is already a major improvement with what's going on in this clubhouse and the chemistry we have already compared to, I think, any Blue Jays team probably in the last decade at least.
Absolutely. You just reminded me of Jimmy Key in that regard, for some of the faithful who are of slightly more mature persuasion and probably have beards, men and women alike, you grow old enough, you remember those guys. And what you described reminds me more of Jimmy Key, because he was a very cerebral pitcher who on the surface was small, had a very tight, compact windup, but he was crafty. And he knew how to throw that curveball and off-speed pitch. And from what I understand, Sagano has this amazing repertoire of pitches. Why not bring it in and see if you can fool some of these American League hitters by keeping them off balanced, especially if you get a guy like Pearson being healthy enough to throw nearly 100 miles an hour. This guy apparently hit 98 early on and still hits 96. So I say bring it on.
Not to mention that whole thing that you just mentioned there, the fact that you do have a veteran like Sugano who actually does know how to pitch, regardless of what level and where and all that kind of stuff. What if he teaches Nate Pearson how to throw a forkball? Just imagine that thing. Just in straight and gone. Good luck getting it. I think he'll take a wicked bend if he's throwing that thing around 90. Come on, that's stuff of dreams right there.
Well, he's got what they call.
Of course, you had to pull up my heartstrings and compare him to Jimmy Key. Now I give him the money. Fuck it.
and he makes hitters. If you watch some of his footage online, YouTube, whatever, you'll see that he has a sinker, a very powerful sinker. He gets a lot of ground ball contact. That's a great way to test your infield to prove that you're championship caliber. Because as we know, that's a huge Achilles heel for this Blue Jays team. So maybe that's the reason they won't take him, is because they're worried he'll throw and induce too many ground balls. But kidding aside, like I said, it's the control, right? Craig, you've always been a big proponent of walks over strikeouts. You'd like to see less walks. You're not as worried about the sexy strikeout. They're powerful. The strikeout, as we know in baseball, is the great equalizer, but not always. Sometimes you want to put the ball in play so you don't have to face another hitter behind you, and that's where a guy like him could really keep hitters off balanced in the American League.
Yeah. Ari, I'm a Bull Durham fan. I'm sorry. Ground balls are more democratic.
They're more democratic, especially if you're wearing ladies' underwear. So it's all a matter of perspective. If Bull Durham taught us anything, it's that superstitions go a long way. But if you start believing in yourself, that's all that matters. And whether or not you do it because you're following baseball god prophecies, or maybe just taking a risk on a Japanese pitcher that happens to be available in a year where he could fly under the radar, go for it. You've got nothing to lose. What's the worst that happens? You know, they invest a little bit of money in him. He doesn't work out, and they've got other prospects in that regard. But right now, he could be very valuable to teach this team how to shag fly balls, turn double plays, and for the love of God, stop causing these brain aneurysms we have from watching the tomfoolery of what they did in the playoffs. I mean, talk about throwing away the biscuit. How many times, you know, did we cringe watching it? So, like I said, you get action with him, but it's worth doing to develop your team and turn it into a real contender.
There you go. So, anything else before I move on to somebody it looks like we might actually be throwing a brick of money at, and successfully possibly throwing a brick of money at? I know Brendan's been chomping.
Success.
Brendan's over here like shaking, ready to go on this whole thing, and just so I'm gonna let you kick this one off, Brendan. But I'm gonna give me 5 seconds to lead you in. All right? Just
sure, give me some time. Go for it.
So,
you're the host.
Liam Hendriks, former Blue Jay Liam Hendriks. So this would be his return tour, which we all know the most recent Blue Jay to do a nice return tour to Toronto was Jay Happ. Had the best, I think, best extended success of his career in his second stint with the Toronto Blue Jays. Liam Hendriks might be apparently very, very close to signing with the Toronto Blue Jays and solidifying the back end of our bullpen, which right now is more or less Jordan Romano and I forget the other jump, Delise. Which that is a heck of a tandem, I think, after what we saw from the up-and-coming return of Delise to Major League Baseball and what we have been seeing in a resurgence, or what we thought we were really going to get from Jordan Romano as a starter, as an incredible possibility at the back end of the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. Liam Hendriks visited Dunedin, which, Brendan, I'll let you give your little tidbit here of how fun that drive must have been for him and why it wasn't just a happenstance. Go ahead and pick that up, my friend.
Yeah, it's a far drive, man. He was going from Fort Myers to Dunedin, and that isn't a short drive. It's not something you just be like, hey, I want to show up at the Blue Jays facility and take a look at it. Like, that's a drive. So, look, I did some digging into it after the first thing came up, and I think he is close to making a decision because I forget who said it. I think it was Susan Slusser, one of the A's beat writers, or somebody in the Oakland area, saying that Hendriks made it clear from the beginning that he would listen to everybody, but the teams that he is legitimately interested in, he was going to go take an in-person meeting and view facilities and stuff. So the only one that we know of so far is going to Dunedin, and probably a little more convenient than going to Arizona for a meeting with the White Sox or up to Chicago or wherever. One thing I didn't know, guys, is Liam Hendriks' wife is Canadian. She's from Montreal. So there is.
I did not know that.
I didn't know it either. That came about on Twitter the other day when the whole Hendriks story was going around, and I think it was in Davidi's piece. So there's some comfort there. And the other thing that I read in terms of him going around viewing and meeting in person with some of these teams he's legitimately interested in is once he's done all the meetings, him and his wife are going to talk about it. It seems like it's a true partnership decision about where they're going to go. So. Look, I don't know. I was like, if you see the political climate right now going on, like let's go back to Canada, please.
Well, not to mention he's Australian, for Christ's sake. Exactly. So I just want to be able to see next time I go to Australia. I found like the only Buffalo Bills bar in all of Australia, somehow by happenstance. It's a good story. I'll tell you after the show, Brendan. Or Adam. But how cool would it be just to know that? And we've been already talking about the Blue Jays splashing on an international level, having the best Australian baseball player playing for the Toronto Blue Jays right now, at least current one anyways, and then being able to find out that there's just a bunch of crazed Blue Jays fans literally all the way across the globe. That's a fun time. I love that part of it, and not to mention the fact that I'm curious now if he actually met his now wife while during his first stint with the Blue Jays.
Yeah, possible. I don't know that level of detail on it, but surely the familiarity is helping. And remember, the last time he would have been playing for the team and being in spring training, he wouldn't have seen the new updated facilities. So he's probably a little blown away with what they've done with the place. So look, Hendriks in 2019 was almost worth 4 wins for a reliever. I think Fangraphs had him at 3.9. That's unheard of for a reliever. Like that's getting close to Eric Gagne type numbers when Gagne won the Cy Young back in 2003. So. And even this past year, in only the 60 games that they played, and I can't remember how many Hendriks was in, I think he was at 1.5. And for a reliever, like Those are some pretty ungodly numbers over the last few years. So you pair Hendricks with Delis, Romano, who will come back healthy, Ryan Barucki, who they said at the end of last year will be a bullpen piece, and anybody else that they add towards the end of free agency, or just guys like Sean Reed-Foley or Ross Stripling. You're looking at, for the first time in years, a bullpen you can go into the season with being like, this will 100% be a strength of the team. It's no longer going to be, yeah, we have some wild cards that could make it good, but we got to hope and pray that they will actually be good. No, your bullpen is going to be locked down with Hendricks back there with those guys.
All I heard is Brendan's sick of dumpster diving for relievers.
Yeah, hey, it's the best thing about this front office is dumpster diving for relievers has, other than J.P. Howell back in 2017, almost everybody else has worked out.
Ari, you look like you got something on your mind. I'm gonna let you scratch the itch here, man.
I love listening to BP talk about reclamation projects, especially when we're the team that usually tries to rehabilitate players' careers and they go off and get more money. This time it's like a negative reversal of the neutron flow here. We're inverting it. We're getting Liam Hendricks after he absolutely enters a whole new reality in baseball. I mean, I looked at his numbers, and the one that just I can't get over is the fact that his strikeout to walk ratio is literally in Eric Gagne territory. And what's even more extraordinary is that I have memories of him for some reason being a very, very cool team player, a guy who just was great for an interview, born in Perth, Australia. Fans of Bon Iver are probably thinking, man, oh man, that alone is a reason to go ahead and take a look at this guy. If you're not going to get Springer and you're going to have money left over, why wouldn't you go after this player, right? He made about $6 million, close to $6 million last year, which means it'll take about double that maybe to secure his services. But then you've got a kingpin, and with Dolis and Romano not being options realistic as closers, and I do, by the way, hope, as you mentioned, Craig, Barucki. I hope he can come back to being anywhere near what we hyped him up to be, because I like the player and I like his delivery and his mechanics. But Hendricks figured it out, and boy, did he ever figure it out. In fact, if you look at his career, you're like, man, this guy maybe hasn't even peaked yet. So why not give him a nice multi-year, 3-year deal? Is it too much to give $40-50 million for 3 years to a reliever in this day and age, considering how we treat them and how they're regarded? Well, look at his numbers. It was like Brendan mentioned, if you really understand what he brings to the table, you can use him in almost any situation. But clearly, as your closer, he would be sending a serious message in protecting late inning leads. And boy, did he prove it last year. I mean, consideration in the top 15 of Cy Young and MVP voting. Who doesn't want to go after a free agent like that when he's available? They don't exactly grow on trees.
No.
Yeah. Not to mention, because I'm going to cue Adam up on this one. This, I think, is the one trade that the Blue Jays' current management feels like screwed things up a little bit. Come on, we got nothing good for Liam Hendricks when we did let him go.
What was it, Chavez? We
really?
got Jeffy? Oh.
Adam, come on. Tell me how this is not like the perfect redemption story that the Blue Jays just get to make that whole bad memory go away. Yes, it's going to cost them a pretty penny, but it spells perfect, I think, in the end here for the Blue Jays for Liam Hendricks.
Yeah, I am with all you guys. I would like to have him back. I think having a solid bullpen is absolutely crucial, especially in the playoffs. We've seen it. Flashback a little bit of PTSD when it came to 2015 with the Royals. That's literally what won them over on us. But my fear is, I don't mind paying a hefty penny for an established reliever. I have a problem paying for it for 4 years, though. I don't like 4-year contracts when it comes to relievers, unless you're a solid closer, and I'm talking solid closer. Otherwise, if that's what he's looking for, I don't know. I'm kind of at the point where I'm just like, I don't know if I want to have that many years locked down for a reliever. I mean, how often does it work out? It doesn't really translate into production for all 4 years. Now, if you're looking to make a legitimate run and you have pieces around that on the offensive side, sure, then you do whatever it takes and you secure that bullpen up at the very least for 2021. But if you can get him on a 2-year and maybe an option at that point, a mutual option, I'm for it. And I don't really care about the price. I've been maintaining that this entire, I don't care what you pay when it comes to money. It does not matter to me.
Adam, you could say he's like the Jose Bautista of relievers right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like he figured it out at 29, just like Jose did. And now you have a choice to pay him during his best years. But I agree with you. Is there a guarantee after 4 years that in years 3 and 4 in particular, like I have no doubt he'll have another good year next year.
Yeah, I agree.
But what if pitchers do start to figure him out? And I agree with you. The last thing you want to do is be settled with a multi-year contract on a reliever making double digits that you then could potentially have to give away for nothing. But again, are we competing? Are we serious? Do we want to challenge in the American League? Liam Hendriks is a no-brainer if he's literally meeting with Mark Shapiro. I would only meet with Mark Shapiro under one condition, and that is to make it clear that my last name is pronounced Shapiro. Otherwise, if I'm meeting with him, I'm probably getting an offer with the ball club, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think Shapiro will pull him out and say, okay, listen, you know us, your wife's from Montreal, you love Bonhomme Carnival, let's go, let's do this coast to coast. For all fans of Jays and Expos alike, come and ply your craft. Because you're right, it could easily be a flash in the pan, but look at the last 2 years. They're ridiculous. I mean, who gets 13 strikeouts per 9 innings with credibility and isn't like, throwing the ball 10 feet wide like Lelouch back in Bull Durham? So he figured it out, and I figure why not reward him? And what a shame, too, that he was gone after 2015, because he could have helped them in 2016 when they continued their, quote, hopeful, window of contention. I missed him in those playoffs in 2015. Yeah. I totally agree with you. That's why we had silly garbage like, what was his name? Price being featured in games when he shouldn't be. Remember when R.A. Dickey was on that role and all of a sudden David Price was used in a short-term reliever capacity, even though he was still scheduled to pitch? You don't want that. You want flexibility. So I figure Liam Hendriks is the perfect guy that you can have to teach your Romanos and Dolases of the world and Barucki, by the way, to be inspired to get back at it, because he's a big one, man. If he works out, having a lefty with his stuff could be a game changer too.
Yeah, I want to throw a scenario out at all three of you gentlemen. Let's say, well, right now I'm going to jump ahead of our schedule a little bit here. John Morosi doesn't think the Blue Jays are going to get any free agents, so let's just let that simmer for 1 second. If that ends up being where the rest of this market is going, we know we're not going to get Springer. We're not going to get anybody else to add to this. And you're looking at this in hindsight. One of the best ways that we could have improved this ball club is to throw that brick of money at Liam Hendriks and reassure the back of this bullpen if we didn't add a starting pitcher through free agency, right? So, okay, great. Worst case scenario, you are throwing that whole ton of money at Liam Hendriks for, let's say, 4 years. Right now, we have, worst case scenario, some really talented young pitchers coming into the starting rotation. With that reassurance of having Liam Hendriks in this back of the bullpen with no other additions to our starting rotation, having at least a lockdown guy that we can at least maybe even stretch to 2 innings, which he used to do a lot when he was pitching with the Blue Jays, maybe not so much now in a closer role. How much of a key thing do you think that is, that regardless of money, we have to make something like Liam Hendriks happen, just because all these other free agent options that we could be improving the ball club through do not appear to be materializing any reality level so far?
Yeah.
Anybody want to pick that up?
Yeah.
There you go.
You have to make a move. And at that point, I would also say, hey, Walker, we didn't forget about you, man. We were always going to sign you or try to. You have to be aggressive at that point, because that still doesn't address your starting rotation. It does address a need in the bullpen, I agree, but that still doesn't address an area of need in the outfield. So at that point, yes, I'm throwing Liam Hendriks a pretty hefty contract, and again, one that you might regret later on, but again, that's just baseball in 2021. I'm offering Taijuan Walker a pretty decent contract, maybe 3-year contract. I don't really know about the financials, so I'll leave that to the experts. And I try to make a splash trade. And whether or not that's Lindor or whatever, I don't know. But at that, you got to move something. You got to do something to push the needle, because as we discussed here before, the next free agent class, aside from Chris Bryant, not really that great. Not really that great of a class. And if you're banking on making a signing, then you're going to be sorely disappointed. So at that point, what I would do is I try to make as many trades as possible. Yes, I be aggressive with Liam Hendriks, and I try to sign Walker. I wouldn't be completely satisfied with that, but I'd be okay with it that at least they did something at that point.
It's a better ball club with both those guys.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, look, we just saw this past year a deeper bullpen, and I know that the roster will be different over a full 162 if we do get a full 162. But having more guys in the bullpen and more quality arms helped shorten the outings for the starters. Now, some of the starters, like Tanner Roark or Chase Anderson, didn't help themselves by going only 3 innings and 4 innings. But let's just say your rotation has improved a little bit with Taijuan Walker, with Robbie Ray, with Thomas Hatch, whoever it is. And if he could get 5 or 6 per outing, and you have the 7th, 8th, and 9th to cover, you add Hendricks. On a perfect day, you go Ryu for 6, you go Romano in the 7th or Dolis, flip-flop the 8th with one of those 2 guys, and Hendricks comes in to close it out in the 9th. And that's a pretty good formula for winning games. It's what the Yankees have been doing for the last few years. You have your guys going 5 or 6, and you bring in Britton, you bring in Canely, you bring in Chad Green, all these guys, Ottavino. So if the Blue Jays can come close to that, that does help the starting rotation by adding Liam Hendricks in a way. But yeah, you need to fill the number 2 spot right now. That is, I know we've talked the outfield at length, but the number 2 spot is the most glaring need in the rotation to bridge it from Ryu to the back end of the rotation, which could be filled with kids and Robbie Ray. So yeah, Hendricks and Walker would definitely make me feel more comfortable. It wouldn't make me feel satisfied, barring an impact trade, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly.
I like the way you think. I like the way you think, BP, because look, the guy clearly, Liam figured it out. And the biggest difference, if you remember when he first came up with the Blue Jays, or when he was trying to get his career started rather with the Blue Jays, because he struggled, I think, with Minnesota. The biggest challenge for him was he was throwing a lot of sinkers and he was missing the strike zone. And when they were hitting the sinker, a lot of extra base hits. Last year, he didn't throw the sinker at all. He now throws his 4-seam fastball, which the league is hitting 200 off him. And that is his worst pitch. Like, no one can touch his curveball. No one can touch his slider. They're batting like 070 combined. It's obvious that this is a guy who started using his brain and figured out how to master control of his pitches. And I love that. It means he's gone from being a guy who closes his eyes and just throws a pitch that he grew up with. Now he's got to stop and think, how do I get out of this situational awareness that I have now? How do I pitch out of this situation? So I say to myself, the guy evolved, he's learned. And even though his career whip is like 1.28, last year it was like 0.67. And I say to myself, you know what? You showed it over 2 years. You did it during a really difficult season. Come on board. Let's do it. I will be more disappointed if they don't land Hendricks than I will be with Springer. I think Springer is an absolute pipe dream. I think Sagano is like a vanity project, potentially, depending on how Shapiro wants to launch the marketing of this team for next year. But Hendricks is just a bona fide win-win decision. And Corsair, I'm with you. I got concerns if it's 4 years, but there are worse things in the world than getting a guy who's demonstrated that he's learned and evolved. And at 31, he's mature enough to not ruin his career, because, you know, that's a tough role to play when you're a closer and then you lose it, because that's where you're on your own, you're embarrassed. And if he comes here, tells me he's willing to take the challenge of playing for a fan base that's struggling, suffering, wants to see some good late inning lock, stock, and barrel action.
Yeah, and Ari, more to that point, if they do give him a 4-year deal and it's on the plus side in terms of financials, what's the worst that could happen? He sort of bottoms out in year 4. Okay, you just release him again. It's just money. Like, it's just money. Who cares?
I'll even go a step further on that 4-year thing. What's the worst case scenario? That he takes a step back and he's the setup guy, and Romano or one of those guys step up, or what we've goofed around and made fun with this show, that Sean Reed Foley is the next great Toronto Blue Jays closer.
He could be. All he needs is control.
Yeah.
He's got gas.
You know, it's ironic you're laughing about that when they were thinking about that with Hendricks the last couple of years, right? If you would have mentioned that he would have turned into the kind of player that he has, like I said, he's the Jose Bautista of short inning relievers. He figured it out. Everyone's scratching their head wondering, how do you do it? To me, it's really simple. He stopped throwing the pitch that wasn't working and replaced it with the one that is. Yeah. That's why I'm confident that he'll get it done, especially, playing in these American League parks.
Okay.
I got nothing else to add on that subject other than a desire to see it.
That's a mic drop.
Yeah.
So I'm in agreement with you on Ari, as far as I think the most realistic person out of what we have talked about here. Yeah, the Springer is obviously we're arriving kind of move, right? Then the Stagano thing, okay, that's a nice upside, decent risk. There's minimal risk, at least for the next couple of years, on Liam Hendriks, and probably long term, especially when we're looking at the team's current financial situation. Okay, $12 million. Right now, I think that they said the Blue Jays have the lowest on record payroll right now.
Do you really want to crack that nut? Because we'll be here for another hour if we're going to rage on against.
We're going to have you back next week, I
guess. I'll come back just so we can talk about where the Blue Jays rank in terms of payroll. It's a shameful and shameless subject at the same time, if you think about it. Because really, Adam mentioned earlier, you got to spend to show the fan base that you're serious, to contend. It's just the nature of the game. And quite frankly, in a game that has record revenue coming in for lowered attendance going into this COVID year, baseball's got to smarten up and understand that the only way these teams will compete is if they spend money, because you're not just going to be able to reach into your bag of tricks and keep grooming a Bichette every single year. Yeah, they've done a great job in that regard, but it came at a very costly price of our patience and sanity. And I'm sick and tired of hearing that bullshit validation, right? If Ross Atkins is serious and is telling the people of Toronto, we're going to compete, we're going to spend, then do it. If you don't, spare the gobbledygook for those down at the U.S. Capitol right now. You know,
he's been sitting on that comment.
Flipping the line, exactly.
So all I'm hearing is I got to change this from "Hurry Up and Wait" as the show title to "Embarrassment of Riches" if Ari's naming this show.
I'll bring it. I'll keep bringing it every week. You guys, let me know. This is a blast. I love it, man. Listening to Corsair and BP, they're like two poobahs, two gurus on the mountain, and you're like the guy. You're the Sherpa bringing us into this experience so we can all enjoy it. It's good stuff.
This week.
Next week.
Next week, somebody else gets to deal with me.
That's it.
So before we got one other elephant in the room that we have to talk about, and I hope it doesn't spiral even more out of control, because we're right around that 55-minute point now with the current show. So I happened to be working the other day, and I'm listening to the Talking Baseball podcast, and they had Buster Olney on the show talking just how weird this off season's been and how nothing's happened, similar to how we've been kind of beating that horse, this whole off season. But thank you, Blue Jays Nation, for being here with us for our wonderful ranting. And it got to the point where they were talking about the Toronto Blue Jays as the next upstart in the American League, period. And how, mind you, the Talking Baseball gang, there's 2 Yankees fans and then Trevor Plouffe. So just to put that in perspective. And now Buster Olney's on this show, and he's starting to scare the Yankees fans just with what we're talking about on this show on a weekly basis. And then he drops this thing, goes, "Oh, you think that's scary? The Blue Jays are going to get Francisco Lindor, or the Washington Nationals are going to get Francisco Lindor." That is Buster Olney's current prediction for what he is saying is an inevitable trade pre-spring training or during spring training for Francisco Lindor to leave the Cleveland, whatever is now. So the Cleveland baseball team, I'm going to start calling them. So, and that's a pretty prominent name. And now apparently Rosenthal's in that same ballpark, that this trade is going to happen. And apparently the Blue Jays are possibly one of the front runners in this thing. Are you guys now back on this hype train for something, especially now that we're not hearing the George Springer things or the quote-unquote aggressive offer? Who wants to dive on this freaking grenade first? Anybody?
I'll go.
Okay, you're going. Your turn. He wants to just make sure he shows the toothpaste tea off a little bit further on his brand new styling.
Brand new. Got that new fitted smell.
There you go.
I think that my position on this hasn't changed, and this may be Buster only doing some sort of lip service just to get the wheels turning, because it's been relatively quiet since the Padres have made the splash, in terms of big name free agents or big name people on the trade docket. Yeah, I don't. Would it surprise me if he was traded in the offseason? No. But I think they might have a little bit more leverage for teams that are in legitimate contention come the All-Star break towards the deadline. Look, my position hasn't changed. Do I think he'd be a good fit for the Blue Jays? Sure, with a little bit of moving parts here and there, sure. But I'm not giving up Lourdes Gurriel if there's no extension. I'm just not doing it because, again, I don't think if Francisco Lindor is the only thing that this team is adding, that is not enough. That is not enough to make this a World Series contending team. Yes, it puts you in the playoffs probably, and yes, that just like Springer before, it's entertaining. But if that's the only move you're making, it's not a World Series team. And I am not giving up the control and the cheap contract of Lourdes Gurriel for what will probably end up being a rental. I think there's too much anticipation and too much stock put in the notion of, but he might re-sign with us because, he's going to fall in love with the city and all that. I don't want to even mess with that. If you want Lourdes Gurriel Jr., we need an extension from Francisco Lindor, period. And if that's not going to happen, I'd rather just wait until he's a free agent and try to sign him at that point.
Which could be as soon as next year.
Yes, I'm saying. The free agent class, like I said, is a little bit barren, but if you want to be aggressive and if you're going to learn anything from this offseason and you want to be aggressive for Francisco Lindor, just wait a year and try to sign him. Why give up a player that you can build around and be part of this core for a while when you can just probably end up signing Lindor later? So if it means shipping out Francisco Lindor, yeah, but I want an extension. And if not, I'll just wait. That's my position.
So on a note that the Buster only a part of this conversation too was the fact that he's framing this as this year's Mookie Betts trade. Brendan, would you want to? Yeah. Correct. And that's how he was framing it in this conversation. I left that tidbit out. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I want Lourdes Gurriel Jr. on this team because I really think he could be the next big thing in Toronto because he has that much talent. Brendan, you want to pick this one up?
Sure. Yeah, no, I definitely think Lindor could be the Mookie Betts. Maybe it's a trade that happens right around spring training time or during spring training or something like that. Happens a little bit later than normal. I think I've always been in the position where I just want to get him in the building. And instead of competing against 29 other teams to sign him, I'd rather us have a year and try to sign it with just going against ourselves. I think that's what the Dodgers bet on with Mookie Betts, and it worked, and they gave him a lot of money. Now the Dodgers are obviously a better team than the Blue Jays are. That's obvious.
Arguably.
LA is clearly, in terms of the way baseball markets are looked at, LA is probably one of the top baseball markets, especially the Dodgers compared to the Angels. Sorry, Mike Trout. So that there was a lot more working for the Dodgers. That there was obviously less risk in making that move to get Mookie Betts. And look, I think the longer the offseason goes, the lower the price gets for Francisco Lindor, because once you come to the trade deadline in July, you have him for 2 months. And the price is lower than what you would have gotten if you traded him in the offseason. And I think that's one reason the Red Sox were like, okay, we got to get a deal done. And that's why you saw, Verdugo's a good piece. I forget the other piece that they gave up. I think it was a pitcher. But the two pitchers,
a bunch of AA guys, basically.
Yeah.
It's similar to what we had talked about in that similar package,
right,
with what would have went back.
I guess Verdugo is the Lourdes Gurriel in a trade to Cleveland. And it's risky. It is very risky, especially if you don't sign an outfielder like Springer or Jackie Bradley Jr. But it's very tough because you play it out in your mind of the sequence of events that you want to see. You want to get Springer in the building and locked into a contract, and then feel a little more comfortable moving Gurriel to try to convince Lindor to sign and be like, look, we just signed George Springer for another 5 years. Stay along for the ride, Francisco. We'll give you the money you want. It could be shorter term, so you can hit the free agency window for a second time or first time. But yeah, it's tough. There's a lot of different ways you can go with the Lindor trade. If it's me, at the end of the day, get him in the building and try a sell job when it's just yourself and yourself only versus trying against 29 other teams.
Ari?
Well said.
Serious. Drop
well
your wisdom,
said.
my friend.
It's not so much wisdom as it is common sense. I think both Adam and Brendan brought up the fact that it doesn't have to be rushed. And even though we are talking about an MVP caliber shortstop, at the end of the day, he's coming off his worst year. This is what I find ironic, is that we have the more controllable asset that's peaking, versus one that, and I'm not saying he's going to fall off the wagon, but the thing that concerns me is if Bo Bichette is the viable option, and I read somewhere that he's so bloody gracious, he was going to say he was prepared to move the position if the Jays do have a huge upgrade, which I think is just so bloody classy. I mean, Bo Bichette for premier and prime minister, maybe even like he's the player you want to build around and market at that position. You've got a left fielder now who has a chance over the next couple of years to continue to show you why he's the odd man out, right? Because we always talk about Guerrero, or at least we did talk a great deal about Guerrero Jr. and Bichette and Biggio, but Gurriel is baseball royalty. He comes from that pedigree. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, didn't in the first year of his career, a couple of years back with the Blue Jays, he set the rookie record for multi-hit games, like he hit in 11 or 12 games or something like that?
That wasn't even a rookie record. I believe that was a legit actual baseball record that he had the most doubles or something like that.
You're right. I remember.
And then Bo Bichette eclipsed it.
which is a testament to the fact that the organization is very lucky to have talented players like that. And if you're going to roll the dice and say to yourself, I want to gamble on a player that I don't know if I can retain. I mean, look, it's the Cleveland factor, right? Mark Shapiro probably knows Francisco Lindor better than we probably could ever imagine, because even though he came into his own when Shapiro had already taken over with the Blue Jays, I'm sure he was involved instrumentally in his minor league, progress. And so in that respect, I could see it happening, because Mark Shapiro might have the proverbial baseball hard-on for this player to say, hey, there's a junction. You're going to be 27. We got to get you at the right time. But to give up your everyday now entrenched outfielder who may have the occasional adventure, but at the end of the day is showing you that he's growing as a player. Why does that have to be the order of things? Why not then go after a Springer and take that kind of risk and keep things kind of balanced and decide what you want to swap later in terms of making trades, than to go and put Bo Bichette out of, because where's Bichette going to go? What's the plan? What, he's going to take over second base alternatively with outfield? Well, he might be like a roaming super Canadian captain, because I consider him to be the captain of this team. Don't disrupt that. Shortstop is a very important, sexy position for a reason. It's Bo Bichette's position. Don't bring in a guy who's all about the bling bling, because he is. You watch him. He's got swagger. I like that. I like baseball players with swagger, but he hasn't won anything yet. And I think Gurriel Jr. is learning how to win by sticking with this team, and trading him and disrupting that just seems strange to me, don't you think? Considering what he's shown us in a very, very short time.
It is definitely a little bit of a curveball in the works, and we've talked about that extensively on this show, because if you do end up moving Bo Bichette to second base, as you alluded to, Ari, it just begins this whole freaking spiral of where everybody goes. Does Kevin Biggio become an outfielder? Does Vlad still play third base?
That's not baseball. I agree.
It's just everything. But the fact is, you did mention the swagger, but he kind of is that damn good. Just gonna make that
perennial. Like I said, you're right. Look, if you can walk the walk, you deserve to talk the talk. So Lindor to me is obviously, I'm not going to mince words. I know how valuable he is, but I don't think he's as valuable to this team the way it's being constructed as people think. And if you start disrupting it, like you said, and putting players where they have to adjust, and you pick the most talented player in the most convenient position, well, you only need to look at how this team played defensively to understand why that's dangerous. Players need established positions. Versatility is great. I'm all about versatility. We've had some versatile players. Remember what Candy Maldonado was occasionally when you didn't need him to play outfield? He was your DH. You brought him to play a spot of third
base for a while.
That's it, man. I love players like that. And obviously, if the Blue Jays have more of those players, they'll be better off. But not Gurriel. To me, he's in that cluster of coveted young players you don't screw around with. They're part of your nucleus, and he's an honorary member of that nucleus.
Not to mention a player that earned that spot as this nucleus, too, after what you had just mentioned. A guy that was not quite pulling what he thought for shortstop. Regardless of Bo Bichette coming up through the Blue Jays minor league system, after what I saw from Lourdes Gurriel Jr., I didn't think he was ever going to stick at shortstop.
He's too big. He's too gangly.
I figured at minimum he was going to become second base, but I was starting to worry he was turning into Chuck Knobloch and couldn't handle throwing the ball to second either, or first base. So you saw what that position move did. He is, honestly, it really wouldn't shock me if some point in his outfield development that he becomes a center fielder, because we already saw him be a a Gold Glove contestant in his second season playing in the outfield. And in all reality, he's only really played one actual season worth of games in left field legitimately in the major league level. But that's
he
what
doesn't
could
feel
happen
like
with
an
a move.
experiment anymore, right? He doesn't feel like an
Correct.
experiment. He feels like a guy who found his position and he improved at the plate for it. And we know that happens a lot in the sport, where if you're playing in a position where you're not comfortable with, and the glare is so intense, isn't it? If you're a shortstop, I mean, if you do develop later knob-block-like career qualities, because we all know that's what hurt him later on. He wasn't that bad in the first half of his career, but by the second half of his career, it was abundantly obvious that he was struggling. And so when he started playing DH and outfield, he hit better because it was less pressure. And I think that's what happened with Gurriel psychologically. He realized, I'm not a shortstop. I'm a 6'4" behemoth who can really power the ball to opposite fields. Let's channel George Bell. Let's not try and pretend to be someone we're not.
Can I point out the irony that you point out how important the shortstop position is? This is a team that's been shrouding out people like Alex Gonzalez, David Eckstein over the years.
This is a team that spoiled its fan base by having Alfredo Griffin and Tony Fernandez define the essence of two-way shortstop play. And they left Fernandez in particular left such a mark that it would be very hard to ever replicate. And Lord knows they've tried. And Alex Gonzalez was an example, once again, of the media cramming him down our throats, saying he's a lot more talented than you think. I hate to say it, guys. We all know he wasn't. And the sad part is we lived in denial for about 4.5 years until finally it was too late, because you can't afford to waste years with experimental players at major league positions. That's why the minor leagues exist. And that should be a separate show that I could rant on what Major League Baseball has done to screw the minor league system. But to me, don't expect me to pay top dollar at a baseball game and you're going to experiment with players out of position. Figure out their position, get the right roster chemistry, boom, you'll win ball games.
I'm going to tell Munenori Kawasaki that you're taking all the bananas away. He's never allowed in a Blue Jay dugout ever again.
Man, oh man, that era is so
Monkeys
surreal
never
because,
cramp.
yeah, exactly. We all know what that was. He was a glorified mascot. And sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes a player is just so shitty in nature that the only way he'll fit in is with good humor and being a mascot. And you know what? There were nights where that actually worked because it made us forget how bad this team really was. And in the end, they ended up winning. So there you go.
Good deal, guys. So does anybody have anything they'd like to add on the Francisco Lindor, or where this turned into a gushing of love for Lourdes Gurriel Jr., why we need him on this team?
I sort of left this out before. If the order of things, and I think Brendan, you touched on this, if the order of things dictated that we got a Springer or a Real Muto before and then made a run for Lindor, I'm okay at that point trading Lourdes.
Yeah.
But if this is the only move we're making, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I'm more with you there for sure.
So I have to now, if we're done with that.
Sure.
We have some questions on the board from our loving fans, including apparently a new subscriber with actual, help.
Nice.
So first off, shout out to I mentioned him earlier, Bernie Time, joining our exclusive club. And then from an actual question, we have two questions in all reality from Blue Jays Ranger, aka Nick, fan of the show. He's pretty much has a question for us every week. Make sure we're on our toes.
Sure.
Do you guys see it as a failure if the Blue Jays fail to sign Stagano and he does go back to Japan or to a competitive team?
What's the demand?
Not mentioned, but let's just say that right now the demand is more or less Japan or bust, right?
I'm saying in terms of a contract, if it depends on what the contract is, right? If it's going to take a lot I don't know. I'm uncomfortable giving a long term to him, but do I consider it a failure? No, I would consider it a failure if the Blue Jays make no other moves. Then yeah, it's a wasted opportunity. But
very much wasted opportunity, because in all reality, let's say you do get him to 2 years at a decent rate. So a little bit, let's just say, what did we give Yamaguchi? We gave him 1.3 or something like that.
3.
Yeah.
It was 3. Let's say it was for 2 years, just for the try here. Are you all over that?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then let's just say even further, because it might actually take seeing his tenure in Japan is that much better than the Yamaguchis. Let's just say we had to double that, make it 6 or 7. Are you still all over it?
6 or 7 million
Per year. Yeah. So
for 2 years. Yeah.
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 Okay. I'm trying to find.
You're making it too easy. You're making it too easy, Gordon.
All right. Fuck
If
it.
it's-
Let's give
no,
him
no,
Liam
no.
It's like
Hendricks
captain
money.
assists.
No,
You want to
come
talk
on.
hockey? These are captain assist goals, man.
If it's 2 years, yeah, I'm willing to take a 2-year risk. I'd even give him 30 over 2 years. I don't care about money. I don't care. It's money. Just make it happen. If it's a 2-year contract, what's the worst that could happen? But if it's
I'd be really shocked if it's outside of a 2-year or 3-year deal. I really would be, just because of the age. He's 32 years old, and he hasn't pitched a game in Major League Baseball. As much as I would love to bank on the fact that he is a Major League level player playing in Japan, I really don't know that. It's just what it boils down to. So I would love to throw money at it, but I really don't think I don't see anybody walking up to him and going, "Here, 5 years at a ton of cash."
I don't either. And I think that's why he's disappointed with the offers that he has on the table right now. Would I consider it a failure if they don't sign him and the contract is for little term and little money? I don't think so. Again, kind of like what I said with Kim, I sure am hoping that the lack of aggressiveness behind going after Kim and behind going after Sugano means that there are other stuff cooking and stuff will happen, whether that's Hendricks, whether that's Taijuan Walker, whether that's Jake Odorizzi. Whoever it is, there's still quality names on the free agent market that can get outs at the big league level, especially Odo, especially Taijuan Walker. Both recent guests on Talking Baseball, too. I've gotten into that podcast recently, Craig. It's a good one.
You infected me with that one. You got me.
Yeah.
I just like Trevor Plouffe, so.
Plouffe's a good guy. Plouffe is a very good guy. He's very cool, well-spoken, and they're not just Yankees fans, which is a nice thing about that. But enough smoke up their butts for that podcast. But no, going back to what I was saying. No, I wouldn't
call them for a
consider it
spot.
failure. Yeah, I wouldn't consider it a failure. Would I be happy if they get him? Of course. He is billed as a top 5 starter in this market right now, so that's got to count for something, I guess. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be disappointed.
Brendan, it's only a good thing to plug other people's podcasts.
It's true. It's true.
It's never a bad thing.
Hey, pump the brakes, Ari. You can plug yours in like 5 minutes.
No. I'm being all humble. I'm full of humility tonight. I'm just saying that's a great point you bring up, by the way, that these other podcasts can give you different ways of thinking about what these transactions really mean. But I just love the fact that we have a consensus here, which is they need to spend money. They need to, let's rephrase it properly. They need to invest in this roster.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And we'll be sitting here theorizing analytics based on reclamation projects. And I thought that era was done and done. Like, seriously, if anything over the last couple of years we've learned about this organization, it's that it's very, very good at corporate doublespeak and baseball gobbledygook. And it's got to end. They've got to put their money where their mouths are. Simple as that.
Actually, think about this thing, right? The baseball. Baseball.
You know why people are disappointed with this front office is because of years like 2017 and 2018 and 2019 where Steve Pearce was a headline signing. And that's nothing against Steve Pearce. Pierce was useful.
Or Morales.
But, yeah.
Steve
Don't worry
Pearce.
about
Oh,
Edwing.
man.
Don't worry about the Edwing. We got you Morales.
Yeah. But like Ari, just like you're saying, like people like Steve Pearce, the guy's always injured. He's always going to be a reclamation project. So we have to go look, he's amazing against left-handers. He's going to match them. It's going to be great.
You know it, BP. You can rationalize just about every one of these off-season moves that were sold to us as a bill of goods on the notion that, hey, they'll play better for us.
Yes.
Like stock market projection, right? So,
yeah.
Just like we said earlier on this show, don't worry. Jesse Chavez will be way better than Liam Hendricks. Don't worry about it.
Right? Yeah, Jesse Chavez figured something out with Oakland the past year. He'll be fine the second time around. No.
No.
yeah, exactly.
Look, this is a team with a $70 million payroll. There's no excuse.
Yeah, totally.
There's no excuse.
Oh, wow.
So
That's so embarrassing. I don't even know where to start with that. We're the only Canadian team in this galaxy. Like literally in the Milky Way, we're the only Canadian team. So why can we not find a way to at least dignify our fan base loyalty by and I'm not saying become the most expensive, don't become a Yankees team. Don't become gluttonous in your spending because you can afford to do it. Even though that in itself right there tells you everything. They can't afford to be a top tier spending team.
Yeah.
But don't do what happened last year where they had this before last year where they had the statistic that on the last game of the season they were like at the bottom with like a $53 million payroll. And at that point, I'm like, wow, you're giving minor league teams slowly a run for your money. It's time to grow up. Shapiro and Atkins have gotten enough time and criticism. So maybe now is the time to show these naysayers or contrarians who refuse to acknowledge that this is in fact a very, very talented Blue Jays team. That if they now invest in it as a commodity, they will not only get fan loyalty, but at a time when the fans need baseball most, and they need it in Toronto. I've seen so much memorabilia and paraphernalia of different generational Blue Jay fans, whether it's running into a baby boomer or running into like somebody who is half my age. And at the end of the day, I say to myself, look at that Montreal Expos cap. Look at that Blue Jay sweater. Look at that shirt. It's obvious that there's a great passion here. Stoke the flames, man. Spend the money. Enough of
Or
this
like Adam Corsair
bullshit.
sending me a Christmas present.
There you go.
You see what I'm saying? They're gonna monetize it one way or another. Why not do it by bringing in a crop of players you can get excited about this year?
Yes, and buy jerseys.
Yes,
it's names
exactly.
that people want to go buy jerseys, and that's
Hey man, huge BP, huge renaissance in baseball paraphernalia and memorabilia, as you know, as a result of these times. Capitalize on it. Let people learn about this amazing Japanese pitcher that might be a little long in the tooth, but can still throw the ball better than 99% of arms you're going to have on your team this year.
100%.
I think it's hilarious you brought back the memorabilia idea, and that my Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card in my upper deck spot might actually be worth as much as I paid for it back in 1993.
What if he'd never left the American
baseball
League?
cards?
What if he'd
Baseball
never
cards
left the
coming back.
American League? The kind of numbers Ken Griffey would have had. I hate to say it, but you could make the case that out of all the legendary players in baseball, and he was at the top and should have been, in the Hall of Fame with 100% vote. Somehow, one or two morons in ass hats didn't do what they needed to do. In the final analysis, what happened to him in the National League was almost like watching Wayne Gretzky after he left the Oilers. You know what I mean? Like he still brought it and he still had that aura, but something was different. And it's a shame because he would have annihilated all the records, correct me if I'm wrong, if he just stayed healthy for half of those seasons somehow.
I think he was on pace for it,
Crazy stuff. Love Ken Griffey Jr., the kid.
Yeah. So Nick's second question was, when are we going to get our deal with Sportsnet? I told him he can lead the charge and we'll make sure he can come with us. So shout out. Thank you, Nick, for that fun comment. I had to share it with the gang here. But as you see from my dogs making the mass exit for the door and everybody coming in my back room here, I think it's about that time, boys, that we wrap this up. Ari, you have been a wonderful guest. It's been awesome catching up with you finally on this show. And this is your moment to shine, man. Tell the Blue Jays Nation where they could find you and what you got cooking on your own podcast.
Well, listen, this was an absolute pleasure for me because it was a long time coming. We should have done it a long time ago. I don't want to regret that. I'd rather look forward to a fresh new year where we can do this often. I will be here whenever you need me and vice versa because I do a lot of podcasting and publishing. Best bet is to find me at arishapiro.ca, and there you can get all my great work when it comes to delivering audio, literary, and video, sports consumption, philosophy, some politics, film, arts, culture, whatever is going on in my head, because these days we all just got to find ways to get through the dark night. And if I can contribute a little to that, then I'm doing something right. So real pleasure to be here and listen to three wise men of baseball.
Awesome there it is. Awesome having you on the show. The connoisseur of the connoisseur here of the human experience, Ari Shapiro, who aptly named me the minor league guru for the Blue Jays a million years ago. There, you can use that one for your
dude. No one. Let's be honest, Brendan, Adam, back me up. Who really knows more than this guy when it comes to like raw data analytics from 2003? I know where to go. I go to Craig Gordon. And he tells me all those things. And I love that you do, because we both know, all of us here know, that minor league baseball deserves our support, and it's not getting it from Major League Baseball. That should be, in my opinion, I would love to be on a round table to talk about that, because it's larcenous. Really good. I'm looking forward to it. I figure you would. But it's good to be here, and I appreciate being
trying to cook up some of that for spring training. So you will be definitely a piece of that show.
Bring it on. Let's do it.
It'll be a fun time. So anyway, Brendan, Adam, anything you would like to add to the Blue Jay Nation before we sign off?
For your sanities on Saturday, Adam and Craig, go Bills.
Bills. All right, on. Josh Jacks.
Give me my king.
Can we also have a show? Can we have a show where we talk about how they lost those 4 Super Bowls in a row? Because that's one of those things that when I think back, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the big fan here. Did they have a legit shot on 2 of those 4 attempts, or was it just 1? In your opinion, was it 2?
The first one was the best shot.
Right.
Yeah.
First one was the best
The
shot.
missed field goal. That's it.
Yeah.
Memories. Oh
Yeah,
God.
but just to
That's
say
the
it was,
Courvoisier.
until the Dodgers just almost did the same thing with 4 failures and almost 4 failures in the last 5 years. There's no other team in sports that's actually made it to the championship 4 years in a row. So I'll take that with a grain of salt. As
Amen to that, Craig. Amen to that.
And that might be Bills fan regardless. That might still be my favorite ESPN 30 for 30 is the 4 falls at Buffalo.
Oh, so
I would
good.
highly recommend
So
it. That was
good.
tearjerker just watching the guys even on that. And like I said, you don't even have to be a Bills fan to appreciate it. So what they need to do though is hurry up and do the 30 for 30 for the Blue Jays back to back, because I'm dying to watch that. It's ridiculous. I can't believe they haven't done something like that. How many teams have went back to the back? Oh, that's right. Us and the Yankees.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
all right. Well, before we end this show with the typical 2 claps and a Ric Flair, make sure you find us on the Blue Jays, Twitterverse and whatnot, at birdwatchinggc, wherever you get your podcasting pleasures from, where it might be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, this, that, wherever. Make sure you reach out to us on these live shows too. As you've been hearing throughout the show, we are lovingly talking to everybody that happens to join our barroom chat here. And other than that, boys,
Stadium scene.
go.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to
Sorry.
StadiumSeat.tv.
New. StadiumSeat.tv. Thanks to our buddy here, Adam Corsair. We love having you as part, and thank you very much for being a welcomed member of this group. And until then, next week, guys, until Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern time, here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you might find us on the actual live internet. Let's give that 2 claps and a Ric Flair, boys. Let's go, Blue Jays.
Be the man, gotta beat the man. Woo!